welcome back to Volume 3 of Let's Get Deeper. If this is your first time listening to us, this is basically where we sit one-on-one and try to not talk about pop culture for too much and try and, focus a little bit more on ourselves, I guess. So, I'm Josh, and with me I have got Nick.
Hello.
Time zones are fun. Daylight savings will be our forever greatest annoyance.
Oh, not just that, but I had nothing to do today, so I was like, it hasn't been hot today, and it's not supposed to be hot today, so I'll go for a walk and see what happens. And that turned into nearly 4 hours.
Oh my.
And because it wasn't hot, I just forgot to sunscreen.
Oh no.
So I'm like I'm like a strawberry now. So fun times.
Oh my goodness.
We'll see how bad I go while I'm in Melbourne.
Ooh, that's gonna be fun.
That's where it's usually, especially if I want to keep up the activeness. But I suppose if I remember from today, then I won't get burnt again because...
Fingers crossed.
Wishful thinking.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically we're gonna try and reflect on what happened this year and maybe think about stuff that might happen in 2020. We'll see. It's always a fun journey, especially when I don't actually have any proper questions that I send out. Compared to the first volume where we did this around this time last year. Nick, I don't know.
Yes?
What's happened this year for you? I know, but the listeners don't know probably as much.
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean, I was the second most active mate
Surprising.
this year, I'm going
Shock
to guess. Yeah, the person that wasn't studying full-time and didn't have a full-time job. Yeah. So, I mean, just saying that is a lot of what happened this year. Nothing. I started... I probably talked about this last year, but in November last year, November 2018, I... enrolled in a online TAFE course, and that was fun for 4 months, maybe a bit more. No, because I finished my placement in April. So, officially I gave up in July, and then got kicked out. Yay! And then went to an info session to do that in person, at a school in person in 2020. They were like, "Yeah, we've been doing this for years," and what it turned out is. They just had a terrible system of putting the courses out online for people to see that they were there. So they weren't putting up the courses for the year until January. So when I was looking in November, nothing came up. And even when I was looking previously in June or whatever, still nothing came out because they only put their shit out in January to February.
Oh.
And when I was talking to the people who were doing the info sessions, they were like, that's some feedback we need to send back. We need to send to the relevant people because that's not fair on you. And so yeah, that was fun. But yeah, from February to April, I did placement at a local high school, which was fun. And legitimately, it was the type of thing where at first I was very, nervous, but nervous isn't what I'm looking for. Very apprehensive about whether this is what I wanted. And, it was seven weeks of 1 day a week. And I was like, no, this is actually what I want to do. It's something that's fulfilling, but it's also something that's enjoyable. And so, yeah, I haven't officially enrolled yet, but yeah, I'll probably be doing that for the next year in person at a TAFE, which, yay.
Actually,
yay, hopefully this all
genuinely
works out.
really happy. Because, yeah.
Well, hopefully I can fucking find another school that'll give me placement.
That's
I'm so I'm so tempted. And I mean, I will go back to the high school I went to, but I'm so tempted to just be like, you cunts fucking own me. Fucking just let me do placement here. I mean, technically it's 2 schools now because they've opened just before I graduated. They opened like this experimental school where like you don't have a timetable and your classes aren't really solid. So it's this new like fucking whatever.
So it's kind of like flexible learning, sort of.
Yeah, it's flexible learning. So it's kind of between, because it's kind of like between, this isn't the right name for it, but like a delinquency school, where it's kind of like, where you just turn up to just like, to get back into the idea of going to school, but it's also not like a Steiner school or something where it's that very alternate idea of education, when this is still a still like a formal education, but it's not in a formal environment, even though it is a school. But I'm presuming they need a couple more educational support officers, so we'll see. But I mean, the big thing, and I'm pretty sure, because I think we recorded the first lot of this like a similar time as we are at the moment. So what I found out was that my comic book shop closed just before I left to go on a holiday last year. The owner of my comic book shop pulled me aside and said, I don't want to say this, and I'm unfortunately going to have to say it to every customer that comes in, but I'm going to have to close the store. And we're going to have no new stuff in the new year. We're not going to, the shop is just going to be closed. So that threw me for a loop for a while, and that wasn't fun, especially when, and I found this a lot this year, where like the comic book shop was the place that I went once a week. Even during high school, sometimes I would like go there 2 or 3 times a week, but it was a place where I would like talk about comics, not even comics, like wrestling or anything really. And it was a very friendly environment. And it's where I've met a lot of the stronger friends at the moment. So not having that has been a big impact for me this year, both socially and mentally and emotionally and physically and anything else that can go to it. But the other big thing was that I didn't have new comics, which, as someone who was spending like $50 to $150 a week, I mean, like, it's good on your purse.
Yeah.
But as we were just talking about before, I decided that I was going to try to keep up with a lot of stuff, but go to trade paperbacks. So for those that don't know, comics are published in issues, which is 32 to 48 pages, mainly. That's, you get like annuals, which can be a couple more pages or whatever. And then every 4 to 6 usually, sometimes a couple more issues, they get put into a book, and that's called either a hardcover or a trade paperback or a collection or a volume or many other words. I decided to go to those because they're cheaper. Usually you're spending, about $30 a book opposed to like $6 an issue. So you end up getting like $5 an issue versus $6 an issue. So it's not like the biggest difference. And Marvel are terrible. Marvel fucking charge more for their trades, it seems, sometimes. But yeah, it's why I never got into Marvel, because it was so, I couldn't logic out getting into the old stuff when it's cheaper just try to get into the new stuff. When with DC, it was like $30 and you got 6 issues versus like $8.80 or whatever for a, like $6.60, $8.80 is what I was paying when the comic book shop was open for a single issue. But what's happened is in December and January, all that shit's starting to come out now in trades. So I have long lists of stuff to read. But it also means I haven't read a lot of new stuff this year. Like, I've been trying to, and as stuff, like, slowly comes out in trades or whatever, I've been able to read it, but, yeah, I haven't read a lot of new stuff this year, which makes recommending new stuff a bit hard, and I'll do a quick overview of stuff, comic book related, later on. But, yeah, it was a bit of a... of course it was a shock to hear that the shop was closing, but then it became, it was hard, and, I still run into the comic book guys sometimes, which is nice, catch up with them, see what they're doing. The owner wants to do pretty much very similar to what I'm doing, but he's an old stubborn bastard. Pretty much like I've said to him, because he's still got all the old stock, and I'm like, I will come to your storage unit and I will sort stuff out for you. I don't even need to be paid. But he wants to do it all himself because he's a stubborn bastard. But, if that's what you want to do, that's what you are going to do. So, whatever. What else happened this year? No deaths, which was good. Especially in a year I thought would include deaths. To peel behind the curtain, 2019 isn't quite over for us yet, so you never fucking know, but this year's been pretty good for people staying alive. Hey. What else? What else did I have on my list? Anything? Bushfires haven't been fun, I'll say that. Nice, as people would have seen on social medias and that, fucking smoke everywhere, and, actually, this will be a quick rant, even though I've kind of started to distance myself from the Quidditch community. With the smoke, especially around Sydney, it was pretty bad. And Quidditch Nationals were the past week as of recording, past weekend. And the day or 2 days before, the board put out a notice that was like, hey, if you've got issues breathing or asthma or something, it's your decision to not play, completely removing the liability from themselves, and also something that they haven't run past their insurance. So if anyone was to get sick, they wouldn't have been covered by insurance. And then all the field medics came out and said, we're not happy with this, and we don't want to, we don't feel comfortable medicing at this event, and we don't know how to treat smoke inhalation properly. That's not our specialty. So luckily the smoke died down and no one was seriously harmed or anything. But yeah, people seem to not be taking this weather too seriously, and it's kind of scary.
What was I going to ask you? Going back to what you really wanted to do, when you found out that working at the school was going to be something that you wanted to do, was that something that you really only sort of discovered this year, or it's something that's always been around?
Well, thinking back to as a kid, when did I want to be either a teacher or... it was kind of around year 7 when kind of science caught my attention, I suppose is the way of putting it. When I actually got some hands-on experience, especially in a lab environment. Mm-hmm. So then, as you can imagine, that's why I went to uni and started a Bachelor of Chemistry, and then dropped out of that and did a diploma in laboratory technologies. But also, while in high school and that, I didn't mind either assisting peers or also, Mum's always said I'm good with kids and animals. And so that way, being a teacher, even though what I'm doing at the moment is not teaching, but being a teacher was something that was always something that was kind of I could see myself doing that. Mm-hmm. Especially thinking about having a chemistry teacher during HSC. that like kept us, like had interest in us as students, but also kept us on top of content and organised excursions to working laboratories. And it was always like, I would love to be that for someone else. And after going to uni and not being successful at uni, I kind of like just gave up on the idea of teaching. Before I thought, well, what does how can I then be a teacher's aide? Or like that's the name that we no longer use for that position in the industry, but it's a term that's still used by some people. But yeah, because as a kid, probably what was it around? I mean, I left when I was 13, so probably like 10 to 13 or whatever. Mum worked in disability, so kind of like over those years, I grew up like during that time. For a lot of it, Mum was either a single mother or when she was dating someone. Mum's thing's always been when she's been dating someone, like, I am not their kid. I am not their responsibility. So even during that, and especially when Mum was working part-time or something, to make sure that she could look after my brother and I, like she couldn't afford childcare. So during school holidays and that, we would go to work with her a lot. So I had a lot of experience with people with disability, and especially when they started to do day program, and like my brother and I would participate in the day program, and we would play piano with the clients or cook with them or whatever, because that was just like, it was almost free childcare for Mum. So it was something that kind of like imprinted on me that not only are these people for one, but also like giving them assistance can make their lives a lot easier. And if it's something that you enjoy, then it's making your life easier as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, finding something where, and like a teacher's aide or learning support officer, whatever you want to call them, like they're not just working with kids with disability. They're working, sometimes it can be normal, for like fully functioning people or children or students or whatever you want to call them, with behavioural issues or issues at home, or just it's any kid that needs support at any level of added support. And I don't know, it was just like something that seemed interesting, and I was like, I could do that. And then going into a classroom environment, and it was the first day I did placement, the teacher I was working with said, "Hey Nick, can you help name a student, figure out how to tell the time?" And it was this was weird, because this was a student in high school. And I remember coming home and talking to Mum about it. Mum's like, well, think about it, like telling time is an abstract concept. There's nothing you can measure it against. Like the only thing you can measure time against is time. Like you can, and like this is basic primary school, like prep year 1, year 2 stuff. But like when you learn to add and subtract, you'll use learning aids, you'll use blocks, you'll use counters. Like that is a physical construct that you can learn against. But time, there's nothing. So it was weird for me. But after, like I sat down with the student for, I don't know, maybe half an hour tops. And after that, she was like, I just learned a lot more in that than I have in any other time. Because what I also found while doing placement is a lot of the pre-existing support officers, like, they almost baby, and this is something I shouldn't say against people that I work with, but they almost like baby the kids, where it's like, instead of acting like teachers, which like I said, you're not a teacher, but instead of acting like, but you're still in a classroom. And to me, if you are an adult in a classroom, you should be acting like, and if you're there to help kids learn, then you should be acting like a teacher. So, and even with some students who might have more severe disabilities, like your job is still, like you still work in a school, and a school is there to educate people. So you should still, your goal should still be to educate people to the best of your ability. So yeah, and it's rewarding when a student is like, I just learnt more about how to tell the time in that half an hour than I have in what you're usually school for 13 years for 10, 11, 12 years of schooling. And also just other stuff like having students where they're like, I'm going to use this word, and I don't think any student ever used this word for me, but it's a term that is still thrown around by a lot of people. But I remember a student saying to me, and I'm paraphrasing, like, I am not a retard. The reason I'm in this class is because I have a physical disability and I need extra support because of that disability. I have a fully functioning brain and I can learn stuff, and I actually find it demeaning to have to be in this classroom. I understand why I have to be in this classroom, but... And it's stuff where, like, you learn very fast. Like, not only do different students need different levels of support or different types of support, but it's something that, like, again, like, every morning we would have a meeting, like, the staff would have a meeting, and there was staff talking about, like, how they wanted to learn more about autism spectrum disorder. Now, for people that don't know, I was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder when I was 10, 11, so it's something that I've just always known. So, so it was a surprise to me to see that these staff did not know how to cope with autism spectrum disorder when I've been dealing with it. I mean, I have a cousin who is higher grade, whatever you want to call it, spectrum than I, and he's like, he turned 18 last year, I think. So he's like 5 to 6 years younger than me. So for almost 20 years, I've been dealing with people who are quote unquote autistic. So then seeing that, it also like, I saw it as I'm a breath of fresh air in that. Or whenever I talk to people about it, they're like, we need more male role models or support workers because, well, I mean, a lot of the kids, sometimes they either just need a good male role model or they need someone who's not going to baby or mother them, or just having that male presence in the classroom can push them or like drive them in a different direction. Or even another story tale or whatever is the last day of placement I did there. They said, do you want to go with this student to electronics class and just keep him on the right track, just make sure he's doing work and not trying to goof off or whatever. I did electronics in year 8. I did hobby electronics for like 2 years after that. Plus, I have a diploma in science. Like, I understand basic physics and electric stuff, and I can read resistors. And I went in that classroom, I was like, cool, what's the components we need? And it was, just like reading resistors. And I said to the teacher at one stage, like, he's missing this component. And the teacher's like, yeah, give it. And he's like, how did you know he was missing that component? I'm like, because I can read components and I can, like, it's just something I know. And then going back to the classroom, they're like, how was it? And I was like, easy, like, I've done electronics before. And they're like, this is why we need you in classrooms, because you know, like, you have a skill set that others don't. So it was 7 weeks of just more and more rewarding experiences and confirmation that this is a good path for me. So, I mean, if nothing else, I can say 2019 gave me a couple months of knowing that I was heading in the right direction after, I mean, all years before that being a slow tumble of confusion.
I guess, it's interesting to see, like, what happens, I guess. And it's also really good, like you said, like, to hear the validation from other people about how much you're valued, and like, and use that as the motivation to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, and even though I may have not been successful, like, sticking at that school, and the school didn't have a position to offer me that was right, like a continuing position that would have been right for me, or even having schools not be able to take me or not wanting to take me throughout this year, having, like, I've in July, sorry, Mum had dinner with a friend she went to school with. They just happened to be in the same city at the same time, and she works in learning support. And she said, if Nick was living in the same city as me, I would hire him in a heartbeat, even without experience, because he's passionate, he has, like, the right mindset, he's a good male role model, and he's young. And I mean, you look at it and it is very much, the people who are in it are like 50s plus or like 30s minus. And it seems like for a long time there has been like a gap. And I mean, in any industry, having some young blood in it is good news.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. I mean, like, who knows what could happen in next year with what you want to do, so... Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else, I guess, in what happened for you personally in 2019 that you wanted to talk about?
I don't know, really. Like, not really.
Okay.
I don't know. Like, it's been a funny year. I'll say that. And it has, like, I've been very stagnant the past, at least, like, the past 6 months at least. Especially with disconnect in social circles and having like just a feeling of tumbling lostness, really.
What do I... You sent me a list of stuff, let me see.
That was more a list for me than for you.
Like,
but
interesting. So I guess throughout 2019, what, in terms of like media and like comics, because we all know you're the comics boy on the pod.
Yeah, and I mean, I did say before that I'd be happy to, but yeah, look, I mean, I think it was it last year that I recommended the Green Lantern. I can never be like, I can't remember when comics come out. Like I can. And I've been talking with a friend about comics a lot, and she's always like, how do you remember when comics are? I'm like, no, I don't remember when comics are. I remember when they take place. Like, I mean, especially in DC, when DC is classified, like, in terms of crises. So you've got, like, pre-crisis, which is anything before 1985. And then post-crisis, which is anything after 1985. Then you've also got, like, 0 Hour, which was like 1999, I think it was. No, that was Millennium. I don't know. There's like 0 Hour, which was in the 90s, and then you've got Infinite Crisis, which was 2005, and you've got Flashpoint, which was 2011. So like comics are very much segmented into periods, especially with DC. So I remember it in the periods. So yeah, I can never remember like what came out last year. Like even trying to figure out what I want to recommend this year, I was like, oh yeah, Dark Knight's Metal came out this year, like finished this year. I was like, no, that finished last year. So, and especially like not picking up singles this year and catching up on a lot of stuff, it's been hard. But there is some stuff that did come out this year that I felt very, I mean, the reason I started saying this was because, like, I know I said this last year, but like Jessica Cruz became that like comic book character that I just could not put down comics about, because she was a character who had anxiety and depression, and that was at a time when I was trying to figure out my own. So like comics mean a lot to me, and that's kind of why I read them a lot, but why stuff is important, like why stuff sticks out to me a lot. Like I mean, one of the comics that came out this year, and it's... See, if you haven't read singles, I think it's just ended, but it's called The Avant-Gardes, and it's about a group of it's an all-female comic, but it's a art school, an art school that's trying to get a basketball team because they can get funding. They'll get added funding if they can have a basketball team. And all these, like, alternative schools start a basketball league. So there's, like, the vet school has a basketball league. And the art school with the drama kids have a basketball league. But also it's all female and it's, like, sports and that. There is some, like, queerness in that, so that's good. And it's just, it's one of those stories where it normalizes queerness. And they're always comics that I keep an eye out for, like comics where, like, this comic is not about being queer. It's just that it happens to have queer characters in it. And where you could easily swap one of the characters that are in the romance aspect of it to male, and where it would just work and nothing would change. Where, what I mean by saying that is like being gay is not part of the narrative. Having a crush on someone you play with is part of that narrative. And especially when I play in a mixed gender sport, like, that's just normal. Or even like pick up basketball or whatever, you will have mixed gender. So you can just put it in that context, and like having romance angles in it is fine. So yeah. And that's kind of what I mean as well about like just comic books being good. Or I mean, Archie's another one, and Archie's got really good. Like, even like the fact Riverdale came is because Mark Waid rebooted Archie in, like, I don't know, like 2010, 2012. Like, updated the character and made it more modern. And all those comics are really good because they're slice of life books, but they also have gay characters in them. And that's what I mean, like, it's good to see inclusion where gayness does not matter. So, I don't know, and I mean, Archie got rebooted, where this is where comic books get confusing, because the past comic, because when Mark Waid rebooted Archie, the past comics became like a separate reality, like a separate universe. Then these new comics moved back, but have the same art style as the reboot, but also include the stories from the reboot. So it's kind of like turning the two universes into one, and I don't know, it just makes sense. But that happened this year, and the stories I've read from that, it also includes Sabrina a lot more, so now Archie's dating Sabrina, and that's where I'm up to, and this book just came out, and that's one of the books I'll be buying ASAP, because Archie dating Sabrina the Teenage Witch sounds fun to me. What other media? The video game Superliminal. This was going to be a recommendation, but actually, did I recommend this? I think I did. I think this may have been on the last episode. Video game where you change the perspective of items and stuff gets bigger or smaller depending on your perspective of them.
I don't
but
think
also,
so. I don't remember.
I don't know, but yeah, like, Superliminal was a game I played where I was like, this fucking blew my mind. It sucks that it's Epic exclusive for the time being, but that's more because gamers like to hate on Epic. I don't mind having Epic, it's fine. But it's a game where it just blows your fucking mind and you do not understand how this game works. Because, like, if you take something... The best way to explain it is if, in real life, if you have something in front of you and you move it further away, it looks smaller. Now, that size of smallness, it's now permanently that size. So if you move to it, it stays that size. And if you take something that's further away and bring it closer to you, it's bigger. It's now that size. So it's a puzzle game about moving perspective. I mean, there's one level where you literally have to steal the moon from the sky. So you take the moon that is like I mean, kids do this where you pinch the moon in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
It's that. So you have a hand-sized moon, but it's the actual moon the size of your hand. So it's a game that fucks with your head in that way. It's very Stanley Parable.
Yep.
So that came at a time where it was something where I just needed like the mundaneness to change. So that was something. And I mean, this was just a good comic book that came out this year. And I feel like I recommended this as well. But it's a really good comic book that just is really easy to read. And it's called Spider-Man: A Life Story. And it's just Spider-Man in different decades. So it starts in the 40s, 50s. And every issue is a different decade. But instead of being like normal comics, where the characters just like generally stay the same age, Spider-Man ages. And as the decades go further, stories that came out in that decade get introduced. So in the final issue, so like Civil War, which came out in 2005, is in the noughties issue. And then Miles Morales, who was introduced around like 2010, 2011, is in the 2010s issue. So it's an interesting way of like seeing the Spider-Man story told, but also like including all the other aspects of Spidey's life, which also, if you do the math, it does mean in the final issue Spider-Man's like 60, 70. So you have old man Spider-Man, which is just fun in itself.
Oh, that sounds very interesting.
Yeah, but also because it's a self-contained story of like 6 or 7 issues, like it's a good starting point. I mean, everyone knows Spider-Man. Like Spider-Man. He's had, in the last 20 years, he's had like nearly 10 movies.
Let's check that. So there were 3.
I mean, there were 3 Raimi movies, then 2 Mark Webb movies, then 2 MCU movies, Edge of Spider-Verse, that's 8.
And then 2...
And if you want to include, like, fucking Civil War, Infinity War, Endgame...
That takes us to 11.
That takes you to 11, so people know who Spider-Man is.
Oh, that's fun.
Which is also good now to have a comic to recommend people when they're like, how do I get into comics? Like, just read that one. Because, like, that is... And here's a secret. That is the bane of a comic book reader's existence. Where do I start? Because... And this is something Marvel started doing a couple years ago with having a renumbering comic books every, like, year and a half. Because people are scared of buying issue 700.
Jesus.
Which, like, that's what happened with me. I was like, I don't want to read Batman 500 because there's 500 issues before that. But quickly you learn, you only need to know about, like, the last 12 issues.
Yeah.
Or even the last, like, a week or so, I've been reading a lot of Superman because I have a whole heap of random issues, random books of Superman that are, like, they're nearly chronological. So I'm like, I'm just going to sit down and read all this Superman that's like chronological.
Yeah.
And there may have been like a couple stories that were missing in the middle or whatever. But also when you read enough comics, like you can just fill in the gaps. You genuinely know who the characters are, and I mean, it's pretty easy to read comics, but people don't want to read issue 500. They want to read issue 1s. But also the opposite's been happening in comics now, where DC is just like, we're just going to legacy number everything, which is like the original numbers. And like Marvel did at one stage, but they were like issue 17, but it's actually issue 172. DC's like, no, you get Detective Comics 1016, and that's the only number on it, and you're just going to have to deal with that. I think in the last month, DC were like, cool, Flash and Wonder Woman are now at issue 750.
Mm-hmm.
That's just going to be their numbering from now on. It's legacy numbering. Deal
Yep.
with it. Because I think they've just kind of figured out that, one, people just read what they get given, and all you got to do is like throw on a like starting point, jumping on point, or start of new story, or part one. Yeah. And also, yeah. Mm. Also, you just or you just Google where to start reading Green Lantern. People will say, just start at like Green Lantern Rebirth. You'll mostly fill in the gaps. Or how do I read Superman? Pick up like, I don't know, an Up, Up and Away. Up and Away is a good starting point for Superman. That was just after Infinite Crisis. But yeah, like, it's pretty easy to read comic books. Anything else out on my list? No, not really.
Oh dear. I guess from there, is there anything in 2020 that you're looking forward to?
The Geelong Cats hopefully not choking in the finals and actually making a grand final.
They haven't.
Seriously, the amount of fucking shit I get from people for following the Cats. Oh, I mean, I love them. I'm from Geelong. I've always followed Geelong, except for that couple of years where I followed Brisbane, but nobody talks about that. But it's like, I had a team that won premierships in 2007, 2009, 2011. We were in the grand final in 2008. Like, we were in the grand final 4 times in 5 years. We won 3 of them. That's not too bad. We haven't been in a grand final since. Which, I mean, like, that's better than you can say from other teams.
Yeah.
Brisbane, Gold Coast has never even made finals. But it's like, when your team win the minor premiership and went unbeaten at the start of the year and then had a bye and then just started losing, people will start fucking ripping on your team, and it's fucking annoying. But yeah, fucking the Cats can like not be shit, like just like be consistently good. That'd be good for 2020. This is wishful thinking, and I hope none of them fucking listen. But it'd be good if Newcastle Quidditch Club just stopped being cunts. That's something. Something I won't get into either, because it just brings up a whole heap of private issues that I mean, they're private, but yeah, people stop being cunts just in general.
Fair enough.
Well, is there, what fucking media-wise is there next year? Not much. I mean, the trailer for Wonder Woman 1984
dropped recently.
Like, that fucking looks good. Be good for DC to get back in. And I mean, they also just announced that they're actually doing the Flash movie. It's not coming out till 2021. But, like, that movie was supposed to come out last year. It didn't. I mean, I may have talked about this last year, but, like, I was supposed to be going to Japan next year, but I'm not, because I decided against it, and I'm probably going to get a motorbike instead.
Oh, okay.
Because no one is here to teach me how to drive. So I was just like, I'll just get like, well, I mean, not a motorbike, like a moped Vespa scooter thing. And like, it's going to be like $2,500-3,000. So that's better. Well, I mean, it's not better than Japan. Like, that's not as good as Japan, but it's like more useful to life than Japan.
That's true. That's fair. What else is coming out? 2020, we have Kim's season 4.
Well, I mean, yes.
Obviously, the perennial favorite.
We have Kim's, and we have the end of The Good Place.
Yes, that's right.
Actually, seeing this as my episode, I'm going to quickly tangent because nobody else watches this. But Silicon Valley just ended, and the last episode was fucking weird because Silicon Valley is just like the rise and fall continuously of the main characters. The last episode is just a complete plummet. And this is all spoilers for Silicon Valley, so if you either haven't watched it or you want to watch it or whatever, but the program, they think that they've created the new internet. Like, it's privatized, it's cloud-based, there is no servers, it just, like, bounces off other people's... It's kind of like blockchain, but also talking about blockchain is confusing to everyone, so we won't talk about blockchain. But it's a new internet. But what they figured out is they've created a AI to run this internet that is so good it can break any level of encryption, which means it can crack all the nuclear codes.
Ooh.
It can crack your bank accounts. So they decide that they can't do this. But also they can't just stop it because, like, someone will copy them. They can't just be like, oh no, we're not doing this, because copycats. Yeah. So instead, they fake that their program completely internally combusts. They set it so, like, they reprogram it so it will just destroy itself in the most visually spectacular way, so that nobody else tries to copy them ever. Yeah. Because you cannot have no encryption and break the world. So the last episode is just their initiated downfall. Going from millionaires to nothing. But that was something I didn't know I was looking forward to this year. And hopefully The Good Place can do something very similar, where they just take that fucking concept of the show and just completely blow it up. And they can still do it. After that last episode, yeah, they still have time, and after that last episode, there is so many different ways they can go. But we will leave that for probably a spoilers for days later on.
You mean definitely?
Yeah, for days. I mean, we did three episodes on season 3.
Yeah, no, we'll be doing, I think, at least maybe 4. Because the finale is gonna be.
Yeah, the finale is probably gonna be 1 episode.
And then the after, because the after show.
And then we're probably gonna have to split the experiment and post-experiment. And
maybe, we'll see.
We'll see. We'll figure it out.
We're nothing is set in stone as of recording. So yeah, but is there something personally you wanna see happen or potentially happen next year for you?
I mean, employment would be nice, but we all wish for that. Just like having some stability in either employment or education, or... I mean, stability probably isn't the right word. Probably like just being comfortable. Or like, it'd be nice to not have to worry about how am I going to finish this course.
Yeah.
So like finding a school that are happy to take me on placement for a year, and having regular class where you're not having to worry about how am I going to get help for this, or what's the answer, when you can just go to a teacher and be like, what do you mean by this question? Or, yeah, stuff like that. Anything else for me that I want? I mean, there is a small part of me that still really wants to move, but also there's a small part of me that completely does not want to move. And by that I mean in a state.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that just wants to move back to Melbourne. But also, like, one, it's not always a good idea to run away from your problems. But also, like, you've got to realize the impact that can cause.
Yeah. Because ultimately it is about you and what you feel is going to help the most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, at the same time, like, I may have talked about this on the podcast as well, but, like, I was fucking hoping my brother would have given up smoking by now. Because we had a fucking deal where if he quit smoking, I would play AFL with him. But he hasn't quit smoking yet, so I don't think I'll be playing AFL with him next year.
Fun times. But yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Actually, when does... Actually, that hasn't even... I don't even think that's got a fucking release date yet. Let's have a look. Okay. It might come out, but if fucking Matthew Riley's new book comes out next year, that'll be nice.
Oh.
2022, a new Matthew Riley book of the two whatevers. That'll be fucking nice. Because, fuck, I love Matthew Riley books. The one book I always recommend to people, The Tournament. Go read The Tournament, everyone. It's a book about it's a book about a chess tournament and a murder mystery. It's just...
That's fun. Oh, and I guess in terms of 2020, the Eurovision 2020.
Yeah,
in Rotterdam.
Yeah. I mean, it's the Netherlands, which is like me, but also it's not where in the Netherlands my family are from. Where I mean, actually, Rotterdam's kind of close to where my grandmother's from. Kind of, not really.
But in the grand scheme of things, the Netherlands is such a tiny country.
A country mostly made up of stolen land.
Yes, stolen from the ocean.
Stolen from the Sea King.
Yes. Yes. But, yeah.
Eurovision's always fun. Hopefully it's not as controversial as 2019.
I don't think anyone can make it more controversial, save for what might happen with the Brexit UK. So
do we think that that's going to happen, though?
We'll see.
I think now we have to fucking timestamp this. Because as we're recording, the fucking UK general is going on.
Yes.
And... oh boy.
Oh, this is going to be interesting.
Oh boy, yeah. I'm going to wake up tomorrow, well today, and fucking just be like... I mean, it's not going to get called for a while. Like, because polls are... Because fucking England have their elections on a Thursday.
Which is so weird.
And I googled it, and apparently it's because on Friday and a Saturday, you're too drunk to vote, and on a Sunday, you have to go to church. Which also, like, just vote before you drink?
Yeah?
I don't know. Australia seems to do it okay.
Australia is getting more and more receptive to pre-poll and early voting, so, you know, we do that.
Like, we've had Saturday elections.
Oh, on the day, yeah.
For ages. And people seem to be able to do it properly. They didn't do it properly in 2019, but we'll give them another shot.
Oh, Lord.
Fucking... I'm living in a place of two fucking liberal governments, and I'm not fucking enjoying it.
Well...
Gladys can fuck off in one direction, and Morrison can fuck off in the other direction. And hopefully it's like into the ocean, and hopefully we can trade them both for Harold Holt. I'll trade the fucking skeleton of Harold Holt for both of those cunts.
Wouldn't it be funny if we were able to bring back Harold Holt, but we needed like the correct number of souls of corrupt politicians?
Or fucking trade them both for the resurrection of Bob Hawke.
Oh boy, oh boy. It's gonna be a wild time ahead of us. But yeah, I guess it's probably a good time to wrap up. So, Nick, where can people find you?
People can find me at Twitter and Instagram at Nick Lancroon.
Sweet. And again, thank you for doing this for another year. It's always interesting to see what people sort of reflect on and what they want to talk about, especially like, yeah, after doing this, you brought this idea up actually of doing another one of these.
I mean, I came up with it because I had no idea what the fuck we were going to do in summer, and I was like, let's just fucking do it again.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, this was before I was like, oh wait, I'm actually going to have to reflect upon myself.
Yeah.
Like, I was trying to postpone this for as long as possible, but we had you wanting to be ahead of shit and me not wanting to have to deal with Geelong's internet.
Yes. So, you know, there's that.
I mean, I'm still trying to fucking organise, and I might try to organise it on Saturday, but like, I still want to do a fucking like a full Let's Get Deeper with a friend of mine, just about like comic books.
Yes.
And I'm fucking trying. I've got to figure out how to do the right setup. And I mean, I've got to, like, the content and that will be easy to do, but it's just like how to do the setup. And I think I've got
the audio, the fun stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, like, the quality of the audio can be secondary to the fun that you have doing it.
I mean, everything would be a lot easier if I had a mixer.
Yeah,
but everything would be a lot simpler if we had a mixer.
Well,
I mean, it's hard to use a mixer with
internet.
Yeah, but
yeah, but we, you know, maybe if Australia's internet situation actually improves, and I doubt that will happen in the near future.
Or if Mansion ever happens, or if I do move to Victoria, but then also saying that I fucking live 3 hours away from Anastasia, and that's a fucking adventure. You have not met up with her yet. No, but also she's fucking busy.
Well, for now, when we're recording, but you know, you won't be here.
I'm not going to be here. And on top of it, she's fucking looking at going on a rural tour next year.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, God.
At least she
fun
stays
never
busy.
ends, honestly. Yeah, but, you know, save for her mental health. Yeah. There's always a price that has to be paid. Unfortunately, those prices can include mental health. But yeah,
we all know that.
We all do, and we take that risk. But if you want to come find me, I am on Twitter and Instagram. Actually, no, that's right. No, you'll have to listen to my episode for that.
Or listen to any other episode.
Or any other episode. For this volume, just like, fuck it, you know what to do.
Yeah.
If you want to come follow the podcast's socials, we are on Twitter and Instagram as Great Mates Podcast. Come sub to us if you enjoyed this episode of Let's Get Deeper. We have 2 volumes of fantastic stuff in our archives. But also feel free to go sub to our Spoilercast, Spoilers for Days, and the main channel, Great Mates Podcast, wherever you sub to pods. Feel free to share this to your friends, leave us a rating and review, and we will see you on another episode. Bye!
Bye.